Please enjoy this feature presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. This program may contain adult content and is intended for mature audiences only.
Welcome to Under Lock and Key with Stephanie Kirkora. And now here's your host, Stephanie Raquel. Good evening, Stephanie.
Hello, how are we doing today?
We're not doing too bad.
Loving that weather?
It's going to get warm.
Oh my, I don't trust it.
Oh my God, it's going to get warm.
That's like, 70s. I don't believe your words, I believe actions.
70s by Sunday, I think.
Not until I see it, I don't believe it.
Yeah, it's going to rain a little bit, but not bad.
Yeah, I don't trust this weather around here. So anyways, tonight, we're going to talk about, there's a question you asked me last week, or you proposed to me, I should say, about checking out about how Sonny Bono died. We talked about that. Well, so I kind of looked into it, and I'm thinking, this will be a little insert. No, to find out it's going to be like almost the whole show, because he's going to actually tie into other things. But I almost was ashamed I'm actually ashamed of myself that I really didn't check into his death, because he died back in like 1998.
And it was really a questionable situation.
Yeah, I mean, and not until 20-some years later am I actually looking into his death, and then to find out how much of an upright man he was in the Congress, how much he actually was for the people and for the children. I am actually feel ashamed that I didn't really check into his death, and I just took what they told me that how he died, because it's nothing like how he actually died. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off with. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and start off with the video where he's, the debate. Now, what I think is happening in this video is he's at the hospital, he's watching some debate on TV with the Senate, or the House, and he can't make it, and they didn't give his excuse of why he couldn't make it, so he literally, storms down there.
And I remember a little bit of when that happened.
Yeah, and he storms on the stage to, say why he couldn't be there. So this is before he died, obviously. So I'm going to go ahead and show this, and then I'm going to get into.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're ready? We'll be back on the other side. You're listening to Under Lock and Key with Stephanie Kirkora.
Please.
I don't think you welcome me at all.
Mr. Bono, would you please be seated, and I'll explain the rules of the portion we are in now.
I'm not here to take part in this. Can I speak here?
No. Mr. Bono, you'll take part in your order as the other candidates. Otherwise, it would be unfair to the other candidates.
Well, you're unfair because you won't tell the reason that I'm not here, and you know damn good and well why I'm not here.
Would you
because my wife has been in the hospital critically ill for 2 nights and 2 days, and I've been up for 2 nights and 2 days, and I've been with her, and it's your ethical obligation to explain that to these people. She's pregnant and going to deliver a baby in 2 days. The doctor put her in the hospital because he didn't want complications.
Mr. Bono, would you please be seated, and we'll continue with the entire procedure. You will have your chance to comment.
You grab signs out of my hand, and then you try to sandbag me here. Are you a resident of Palm Springs?
No, I'm not. Mr. Bono, would you please
Well, how do you represent
seated?
This town, then?
Would you please be seated?
You're not my mother or dad. I'm talking, so be quiet. The reason I'm not here, ladies and gentlemen,
Mr.
I'm not
Bono,
here is...
Would you please be seated? You're being unfair to the other candidates. You and I can discuss this later. I don't need to
discuss this with you.
I have no problem with that.
I would like to explain to these people and to the news media
Mr. Bono,
why I'm not here.
I believe you've explained that. Now, would you please
No, I haven't
down?
explained it. You won't let me. You keep talking.
Mr. Bono, I allowed you to say your words. Now, would you please sit down and let's get on with this forum?
I'm not here because my wife is ill and she's in the desert hospital. I was watching this show from the desert hospital. I've given many press conferences telling why I couldn't be here.
Mr. Bono,
my ethical obligation is to be with my wife right now and not here. Unfortunately, I can't be in this forum. I'd love to be here. And you're shaking her up. And if anything happens to her, you're going to have to answer to me.
Mr. Bono.
Come on, sit down.
Unfortunately, Mr. Bono will not stay with us. It is too bad, because then he could respond to the question.
I just told you I can't stay with you, and that's why I wasn't here. I'm here to explain
why
I wasn't here.
To Mr. Blauer. Would you address your question, Mr. Blauer? Mr.
You want to ask me a question?
Sure. Mr. Bono,
Would you please hold it down in the audience? Thank you.
Mr. Bono, okay, thank you, Ed. Mr. Bono, in the news media, we reported why. Obviously, you haven't been here. Your wife, Mary, is sick in the hospital. But I'd like to ask you a question, if I may, about why you're running for mayor of Palm Springs, if you wouldn't mind. The question.
I don't want to get involved in the forum or get sucked into something. I'm running for mayor because I think this city needs somebody who's honest and who can lead it and who shoot from the hip. And
Please.
Appreciate that. You're welcome. And the reason I'm here tonight is because I've been watching the show and no one has come forth with a true explanation. KESQ has announced it over the news, but no one at this function really expressed why I'm not here. Now I'm going back to the hospital. I'm going to watch the rest of this show. And if you have another one, and if my wife's not ill or having a baby, I'll be here with bells on.
Thank you, Mr. Bono. Are there any comments? Mr. Marinoff.
Yes, Ed. It's not obvious to me why you just call up on the telephone for an explanation if this is the only reason for coming down to disrupt this meeting.
Can I answer that?
Mr. Bono, you've had your time. Would you please?
They wouldn't.
Mr. Bono.
They've been calling. They wouldn't announce it over the telephone, Lloyd. They wouldn't announce it over
Mr.
the phone.
Bono.
He was told to announce why I wasn't here, and that's not bull, that's the truth. Call the news people and find out the truth. Why don't you deal with the truth?
Mr. Bono, please. Thank you.
That's why they didn't announce it, Lloyd. He was told to.
Mr. Marinoff. Timekeeper, are you adjusting your time? Let's go ahead and begin again with Mr. Marinoff's response. 1 minute, Mr. Marinoff.
First of all, I heard it on the news as to why Mr. Bono wasn't here. I heard it on the news that he wasn't here because his wife was sick. I believe everyone else had the same opportunity. I offer him...
Interesting.
Yeah, well, I guess that's when he was even just going for mayor there, so I think that might have been first, and then he went into Congress.
Well, you know, the thing that I thought of there, I'm kind of a out of the wall, off the wall thinker, out of the box thinker, whatever. That must have been back when we actually had reputable press and reputable TV people.
I don't know, since Mockingbird, yeah, I think it's since Project Mockingbird, we really haven't had reputable.
Sorry about that.
It's all good. Okay, so I found this article that I'm going to go ahead and read. It's going to be under the Education Forum. It's Sonny Bono and Michael Kennedy. So today I thought I'd look up Sonny Bono and Michael Kennedy's deaths. Both died a few days apart by slamming into trees while skiing. So when I thought of Sonny being a congressman, I had a little suspicion, and I was surprised what I found on the internet about him and Michael Kennedy. Michael is Robert F. Kennedy's son, who she says disgraced, I'm using her words, who disgraced himself and his brother Joe III by having an affair with his children's underage babysitter. His brother Joe at the time was running for governor of Massachusetts. Michael was his campaign manager. Joe felt the wrath of other Catholics by having his marriage annulled so he could be married to another woman without excommunication. He had several children from his first marriage. The fact that the annulment went through says something about the Catholic Church. Ouch. I mean, his main gripe with his first wife was she didn't have the bravura of the Kennedys and wasn't cut out to be a wife of a major politician. And the Catholic Church felt that was deserving of an annulment. I bet a hell of a lot of money changed hands, but that's another story. So this is going to be from the obituary of Sonny Bono that appeared in the New York Times. Sonny Bono, entertainer turned congressman, dies in skiing accident. Los Angeles Representative Sonny Bono, whose unexpected career in Republican politics followed an equally unexpected and successful career as a singer and television star with his former wife Cher, was killed on Monday evening when he crashed into a tree while skiing in South Lake Tahoe, California. He was 62 and lived in Palm Springs, California. So Bono was skiing with his wife, Mary Whitaker, and their 2 children. When he left them about 1:30 p.m. to it was at the Heavenly Ski Resort. I mean, of all places. 55 miles south of Reno. Unaware that he had not made it down the hill, his wife, their son Chester, and daughter Cheyenne, it's really cute actually, waited at the bottom of the slope. When he failed to appear after several hours, they reported him missing. I mean, really? Several hours?
Several hours?
I mean, just thinking. So anyways, Bono's body was found by the ski patrol about 6:45 p.m. Sheriff Ron Pierney of Douglas County said Bono skied into a wooded area and hit a tree. The sheriff said Bono died of massive head injuries. There was no evidence of drug or alcohol use, he said. Bono's death came less than a week after Michael Kennedy, the 39-year-old son of Robert F. Kennedy, was killed when he hit a tree while playing football on a ski slope in Aspen, Colorado. Michael Kennedy's uncle, Senator Edward M. Kennedy, I guess of Massachusetts, said his family was heartbroken at Bono's death. So Bono met his 4th wife, Mary Whitaker, in 1985 when she walked into a restaurant he owned on Melrose Avenue in Los Angeles to celebrate her graduation from the University of Southern California. They were married a year later. What his wife, who assumed his seat in Congress after he dies, says about his dying is, Bono's wife, drugs killed Sonny. Sonny Bono's widow isn't letting him rest in peace. Representative Mary Bono tells TV Guide that the pop star turned congressman was a prescription drug abuser, and she believes that this led to his death in a skiing accident last January. So Mary Bono, who replaced her late husband as a California representative, which, is that what they do? Isn't that kind of weird?
What's that?
Like, I mean, that she took his place?
Well,
like, is that how
you've had that even happen around here.
That's so all senators,
that's how wives, Martha Fudge from Cleveland actually got in.
So all senators and House wives take their place if something happens?
They can.
Oh, okay.
They have to be appointed.
Oh, okay. He was taking 15 to 20 pills maybe a day at the time of his death. She says the pills were prescribed by doctors for chronic back and neck problems. I mean, I don't see somebody skiing if he had that many problems. But I am 100% convinced that is why he died, she says. What he did showed absolute lack of judgment. That's what these pills do. They take away your thought process. According to his autopsy results, Bono showed no signs of alcohol or drug abuse. But Mary says that Sonny had therapeutic levels, prescribed amounts of Vicodin and Valium in his system. You know, these drugs come with the warning, do not operate machinery or whatever.
Yeah.
So Mary Bono also says the pills made her husband moody, withdrawn, and angry, causing severe problems in their marriage. People don't know this. They don't know the true struggle that was there, she says. One time Cher said, you know, Mary, you've got to get out of there. She knew how bad it was. His mood swings were so hard. In the middle of the night, he would wake up and be angry about something. It was, she says, a very difficult 12 years of my life. Mary Bono says she and Sonny didn't have a prenuptial agreement, so I could have left him and done well. But I chose to stay and work it out because I truly loved him. So it is pretty extraordinary to have 2 such prominent skiing deaths recently. Michael Kennedy and Sonny Bono, I guess they were like major skiers. But the fact of the matter is that there's almost no excuse for even an injury in modern recreational skiing, even if you want to go pretty fast and on expert trails. During the past 25 years, immense advances have been made in ski equipment. If your equipment is properly adjusted, your skis will detach if you fall. Your ankles and your knees will escape injury, though you may be shaken up a bit when you hit the snow. For a while, about 10 years ago, leg injuries became so rare that wrist injuries were actually more common. Ski pole traps were spraining people's wrists when they fell, but now the ski poles are made to fall free during a crash. So just about everything has now been done in the direction of safety as far as equipment is concerned. So of course equipment has to be properly adjusted. If you buy the best bindings in the world and fail to adjust them correctly, I mean, you might as well go ahead and nail your boots to the skis. So I mean, basically what the real point about there is that they've made ski equipment to where to deter almost anything in these things that could happen. So it's just weird that 2 prominent people die from ski accidents by hitting a tree in 1 week.
And now for the rest of the story.
Right.
And let me interject something here.
Yeah.
There was rumor that him running into those trees wasn't the first time he was chased. There was rumors months before that skiing accident where he died. There was rumors that he was being chased by somebody or a group of somebodies.
Right, and so that's where this is going to be.
And this is what I've always, ever since I lived through all that. I lived through watching Waco and all that. But I think you have to wonder if his involvement in that, and especially what he did to that guy in that press conference.
Oh.
He was a butthead. But he was a good politician.
But he really wasn't. I mean, wait until you... He was for the people. That's the problem. He was for the people.
Exactly.
I mean, and if he had to be a butthead to be for the people, that was because they were making him be a butthead.
And, this is where I've always wondered what actually did happen.
Okay, so were you ready to dun? Or how's that go?
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. So this will be off of the Daily Telegraph, and it's going to be hitmen clubbed Sonny Bono's death, FBI claims. So Sonny Bono, former husband and singing partner of superstar Cher, was clubbed to death by hitmen on the orders of drug and weapons dealers who feared he was going to expose them, a former FBI agent claims. Ted Gunderson, who's your man, that's that guy that you really liked, yep, he's now a private investigator, has told the U.S. Globe tabloid that Bono, who served as mayor of Palm Springs for 4 years, did not die after hitting a tree on a Nevada ski slope in January 1998, as everyone believed. It's nonsense for anyone to now try to suggest that Bono died after crashing into a tree. There's zero evidence in this autopsy report to show such an accident happened. Instead, there's powerful proof he was assassinated. This was an evil plot that was carried out to almost perfection by ruthless assassins, Mr. Gunderson told the paper. So the former agent who has been researching Bono's accident for the past decade said top officials linked to an international drug and weapons ring feared the singer-turned-politician was about to expose their crimes, so they had to kill him on the slopes. Bono, an experienced skier, this isn't somebody else saying that he was ambushed on the slopes by hired hitmen, who beat him to death and then staged a tree collision, Mr. Gunderson said. He called for authorities to dig up Bono's remains and open a homicide investigation. His claims have reportedly been backed by top forensics experts who fear Nevada authorities were too quick to call the death a skiing accident. So investigator Bob Fletcher had also confessed he sent evidence of a 10-year study that linked top U.S. government officials to arms and weapons dealers to Bono less than a month before his death, the Globe reported. Bono was going to make it his number one priority. There's no doubt in my mind. Sonny was murdered by someone who needed him silenced, Mr. Fletcher told the paper. Now, what I'm going to have here for you in a second is Mr. Fletcher actually talking about this also. But there's another article I want to read before that. And this is going to come from The Witness. And it explains his wife's words, cause of death of Sonny Bono. Less than a year after he died, Republican Congressman Sonny Bono's widow, Mary, came out and said some pretty strong things about Sonny. She was duly elected to Congress and married another man soon after. I think Mary Bono wanted to convince people that drugs made Sonny slam into a tree while skiing alone on a remote slope. Why? I think Mary's afraid for her life. If Sonny was killed for knowing about high government involvement in drug and gun trafficking cartels, Mary probably learned from Sonny about these outrageous crimes and got a warning after his death. So she came out and said Sonny suffered from bad mood swings and was under the influence of Valium and Vicodin when he went to ski alone on that dangerous slope. He couldn't think straight, she said. She's covering up these high-level government criminals, and I don't blame her. I believe Congressman Sonny Bono was murdered, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. Read the earlier post on this page. Michael Kennedy, son of Bobby Kennedy, died a few days earlier from the same thing. He hit a tree while skiing and playing football and died. This might have given the hitmen an idea for how to knock off Sonny Bono. And then I'm only going to read this because I almost can't believe that they even printed this article. And this is going to come from The Vault. It's just a pretty nasty article, I feel. Just even off of the title, even. Slippery Slopes blame dumb decisions, not skiing, for the deaths of Michael Kennedy and Sonny Bono. And in skiing news last week, trees remain undefeated and untied. Oh yeah, it gets worse. In 33 years on the slopes, I still haven't seen a tree taken down on a stretcher. After Michael Kennedy and Sonny Bono hit trees while skiing and died, a wire service story appeared on the internet with the headline, Kennedy and Bono death show perils of skiing. Our sympathies go to the families of the deceased, but Kennedy's and Bono's death show the perils of going stupid on the slopes. Just for starters, Kennedy was taking what was going to be his last run of the day. The dread last run has caused more broken bones than the Green Bay Packers. Tradition in ski lodges is when you see somebody with a cast by the fireplace, the first thing you say is, last run. The person nods, you nod, makes sense. By the last run, you're cold, your muscles are tired, your reactions are a little syrupy. The light is flat, so you can't see the bumps and the hollows, and especially the ice patches that start forming. But Kennedy went 2 exits past last run on New Year's Eve. The lists were closed. It was 4:15 p.m. on the Aspen Mountain, which is like 3:15 a.m. in downtown Detroit. Anybody with half a cerebrum is inside. Plus, snow conditions that day were scratchy, hard, and fast. A hockey stop that might carry you 25 feet in good snow can take you 100 in scratchy. So, okay, dumb time to be skiing. But all-world dumb time to be skiing while videotaping friends and family playing ski football, as Kennedy was, and skiing while looking backwards for a pass himself, as he did right before his fatal collision with the tree. I suppose there are some similarities between skee ball and pro football, as in the NFL, the receivers wear gloves. As in the NFL, snow plows are involved. Unfortunately, also, as in the NFL, there are boundaries, and Kennedy hit one of these just after having made a catch. Kennedy did all this despite the fact that his family had been warned the day before by a senior official at the Aspen Skiing Company, which runs the facility, that playing ski football was a very bad idea. Somebody could get hurt, possibly in Kennedy. Nevertheless, the family played some more. As for Bono, he was supposed to be a good skier, but he was 62 and lived in 2 places: Palm Springs, California, Washington, D.C., where there aren't a lot of double black diamond slopes. Lots of dangerous moguls, but not a lot of places to work on unparalleled turns. Bono must not have been too good. 2 years ago, he took a bad shin gash when he collided with another skier. So here's a busy congressman restaurateur skiing on a senior ticket with his wife, Mary, and their 2 children at Heavenly Ski Resort in Lake Tahoe 5 days following Kennedy's death. After Bono's little girl falls on an intermediate slope, Mary takes the children down another trail. Sonny sees it as a chance to do some tree bashing, telling his wife he would meet her later. The term tree bashing is a bit of a dark joke, a reminder of just how dangerous a thing it is to do. On a day when the powder's all skied off, you take to the patch of trees that divides the slopes because the snow is always knee-deep in there, so is the danger. Since you've got to weave through trees which are often no more than 5 feet apart. Hey, they're not even doing social distancing there. I had to put my own in there, sorry. At 20 to 30 miles per hour in snow that has settled some and is hard to turn in. Make a mistake in there and you're eating more tree than Yule Gibbons. You have to be a damn good skier to tree bash. People who have skied their whole lives never go in there. At Heavenly, there are no signs everywhere that say no tree skiing. Apparently, Bono felt about ski resort signs the way Kennedy felt about ski patrol warnings. Wow, this guy is just a dick. I mean, hey, people do stupid stuff all the time. A man in Virginia died last July when his bungee cord turned out to be longer than the distance he wanted to jump. 4 men in New Zealand.
I hate when that happens.
4 men in New Zealand were killed over the holidays trying to reenact a television commercial in which 4 rugby stars make a simulated leap off a 100-foot waterfall to grab a can of apple juice. You don't have to be a politician to come up with a bad idea. Look, skiing is safe. According to National Ski Areas Association, 1 skier per 1.42 million ski visits end up in a pine box. Cycling kills 10 times that. Water sports kills 25 times that. Skiing isn't like flossing sharks. Just read the little signs, listen to the guys in the bright red coats, and try to make sure your last run isn't really your last run. I don't know, I just found that very offensive of an article after, the Michael Kennedy, I really am on the fence of whether or not maybe he was being a jerk and playing the football that like he wasn't supposed to. But I kind of do believe that one guy when he said, oh, well, that could have been a way the hitman realized, hey, that's what we could do, Sonny Bono. Because I guess after he was on Christmas break, and after Christmas break was supposed to be done, he was supposed to come back to the Congress meeting, and he was supposed to break out on the drug cartel then. And that's why they went ahead and did it in that time. It just seems a little convenient that they found that way after, I don't know. And Kennedy's, so... But I do have the other video we're going to show. And this guy is the guy who gave Bono the information about the cartel. And Bono was going to look into it further.
Which one is
it? Should be the Sonny Bono and... Read them to me. It's not the Ruby Ridge one.
I've got the Sonny Bono Waco mass murder.
Yes, that one. Yeah. Okay. It's like 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be back on the other side. You're listening to, Under Lock and Key with Stephanie Kirkora and on Crooked River Radio Network.
Salem. My testimony is that I consulted with Dr. Salem as part of the process to try to make sure that I did everything to ensure that the gas would not produce permanent harm to children or the elderly.
Was that the only study you did?
That was the person that I talked to. I also consulted because they were there at the same time with the commander.
Part of the British study that was testified here, they gave us descriptions of symptoms of overexposure of the CS, producing excessive salivation, congestion of the nose wall and the pharynx, a feeling of suffocation, and first and possibly second-degree burns in sensitive people. The report further quotes the U.S. Army Chemical Research and Development Center that they know of no laboratory studies that have ever been conducted with CS that have been utilized on children as subjects. They also state that the Army databases contain virtually every study on CS that has ever been conducted by any government or private facility in the world. Knowing that your first concern was for the children, I find it difficult to understand how after extensive, exhaustive research you fail to uncover the following information that I uncovered in just one day. A report contained in the Journal of American Medical Association dated August 4th, 1989. That states, I quote, inhalation and toxicology studies at high levels of CS exposure have demonstrated its ability to cause chemical pneumonitis and fatal pulmonary edema. According to an ear and nose and throat surgeon that I talked to, pulmonary edema is caused when the mucous membrane is irritated. It secretes mucus, which in children and infants plugs up the bronchi. They thus drown in their own saliva and mucus. As soon as the child breathes the fumes, the process begins. Soon after that, the child has little lungs left to breathe and dies. I find it impossible to believe that the most powerful law firm in the country, the Department of Justice, at your disposal, you could not find this information out. That I found out in one day with 2 staff members.
But on Sonny's case, I had delivered, as a matter of fact, it was related to originally I believe probably one of my journeys to Washington, talking to some of the Dante Feisel's people doing, or Henry Gonzalez. I did things relative to the finances when he was connected with the investigating some of the financial garbage going on. He was a congressman out of Texas. Anyhow, the bottom line was somehow we crossed paths. I crossed paths in Washington with one of the guy that ran Sonny's offices, Sonny Bono. And I told him I was working on this major thing connecting the CIA and drugs. Now, this was after the Waco events and all of that stuff. Sonny had become so traumatized when he got up to Washington. You know, again, he knew about corruption, but he was destroyed when he started finding out how high it went and how deep it went and how extraordinary it was relative to billions and multi-millions of dollars.
I'm going from memory, but didn't he break down and cry over Waco and stuff?
Yes, he did.
And I remember watching him on C-SPAN because I was addicted to C-SPAN at that time, and he was really starting to get in people's faces, and you could tell he was freaking out that he was in the middle of a bunch of crooks.
Yes, he did. He actually broke down and cried. You know, you can look at that from 2 sides. His life and mine were so terribly familiar. I did things in the record business that he did in the record business. He, of course, became much more famous, but nonetheless, he and I ran down mutual railroad lines side by side, like you and I. But anyhow, to get back to what took place there, so I told Sonny was looking into the narcotics, etc., and of course Maxine Waters was doing her theatrical thing relative to it on the floor of the Congress, screaming and yelling about the connections. So at that time now, I was living in Los Angeles. All right, this is early 90s. I had moved to L.A., and Congressman Waters' offices were right close by. I contacted them, and I said, I'm going to finish this report in a couple of weeks. I'm going to give it to you. And I said, now, this names names that you're not going to want to talk about. You know, and they said, which of course I heard that before, they said, oh, we don't care wherever the chips fall, you know, in the name of honesty, you know, and I thought, yeah, ha-ha, on that one. So I supplied her with a copy of this, her offices, and I supplied Sonny. Now, Sonny took a couple of months. In that interim period of time, Waters slowed down and was no longer screaming and yelling about the narcotics being supplied to the streets of America by our high-level government.
Somebody had gotten a message to her because she was on the news before that, I remember.
Right.
She was going and confronting the CIA director, Mike Rupert was. That was big news then.
Right, and Mike and I are good friends, too, by the way. But, okay, so we go. So she did nothing. As a matter of fact, part of that, believe it or not, something that was missed, but Greenspan, Alan Greenspan, visited her, walked the streets of her backyard in California, in Southern California, and promised her $100 million, if I remember right, financial assistance. Now, I don't know where the heck he's supposed to get that assistance, but they got an awful lot of community assistance exactly in this period of time. I'm talking within a couple of weeks of what I'm talking with the report, and that was the end of her. She never complained anymore. So not to say that that was directly related, but it's very possible.
And for those that don't remember, the inner city areas were turned into war zones when the CIA started bringing the crack in, and there were actual people so drugged out they wouldn't eat or even drink that looked like zombies with all their hair falling out. Literally, because I grew up in Dallas and saw a lot of these. They look scarier than actual, fake zombies in movies. So I could see why she was wanting to get the drugs stopped being shipped in. But I mean, that's like putting a Band-Aid on an axe wound to say, oh, here's $100 million for community stuff.
Yeah, I think actually she wanted to just get the credit. I don't know whether she really had a lot of care for that, but for that area. Okay, so I supplied my report to Sonny, and by the way, which is one of the ones that I have available at my website, and that's the one on, it's titled it's titled The CIA and Drugs, et cetera, et cetera. I supplied this in a DVD form. Sonny finally got to look at it. He got back to me. I received an advance information that Sonny had gone over it. He had freaked out and was moving forward to initiate a congressional inquiry based on primarily what I had supplied him with. And there's specifically a few people that he wanted to go after. I said, great, let me know how that happened, what's going on with it. Another month went by or whatever, and I received the call right in the middle of December, and I was told, Bob, Sonny has it all set up. In 3 weeks, when he comes back from the Christmas holidays, we're going to begin the inquiry into all these characters and everything that's going on. We want to make sure you're going to be a witness and that you will assist us to go from there forward. I said, absolutely. I'm in Los Angeles now, but when you need me, you let me know, and I'll be in Washington, and let's go and do it. And the big deal was that Sonny had said that they had set up subpoena powers for the congressional inquiry. Now, this may not mean anything. It's just a word to a lot of people. But the bottom line is that commonly, with all of these inquiries that are by Congress and Senate, they're shut down all the time. They're sidestepped. We are lied to. They come in. They have experts that come in and sit on the committees. They know how to shut up everything.
Well, here's an example. The TSA ordered Congress not to have all these top forensic security experts testify, proving their machines are frauds and it's all theater. And they tell, that was in the news the other day, the TSA tells Congress, and Obama tells Congress what he can and can't do. He tells Congress, hey, we're going to have a war, and you're not over that. The UN is now.
Yes, absolutely. So the total control thing by this time is just forget about it. Anybody that thinks you're going to get anything done, like the idea of write your congressman, phew, give me a break. That's almost a comedy routine. But let me get to the most upsetting thing in 30 years in my life, I think, was the Sonny situation. So what happened is he gets my report. They're going to move forward with the subpoenas. Subpoenas means that they're going to be able to tell these people to answer the questions or do jail time for not answering the questions. That's the difference that Sonny had set up. He was going to be on this new intelligence committee. Everything was set and in place. And so I said, great. I wished them all a nice Christmas, and that was it. 10 days after I received that telephone call, Sonny Bono was murdered on the top of the ski slopes. Period. End of story. When it happened, it just totally freaked me out, because the bottom line is I genuinely feel somewhat responsible for his death, because I know the materials I sent him and the phone call I had gotten 10 days earlier was the last straw for the bad guys. They were in a position to either stop, and actually they had to kill and terminate Sonny before he came back, which would have been about 10, 15 days after he was killed. They only had 10, 15 days left. If they hadn't killed him, and where he was going to move forward with the investigation would have been started, and somebody would have finished it, even if he had been killed then.
Incredible. Going back to Bob Fletcher of BobFletcherInvestigations.com, finishing up with the Sonny Bono, because I want to spend a little bit of time with you, and then if you want, we'll have you back next week or the week after to really get into weather weapons and everything I originally wanted to get you on with. But I remember 93, 94, watching Access TV, people putting Bob Fletcher investigation videos on, and it was just, I was like, this guy's really credible. I've seen him on C-SPAN testifying to Congress, but then he's talking about weather weapons. That was just too far out for me. Now it's just, the government's weather modifying, but it's secret. And it's everything Bob exposed. So I'm going to do a whole hour with him on how he knew all that. But finishing up with Sonny Bono's murder.
Okay, sure enough. And like I say, we end up running out of time because whatever, we're talking 30 years of crazy stuff here. So with Sonny's case, I called Sonny's office right away to my longtime associate up there for a few years, and he would not take my calls. Now, this is a guy I normally would eat lunch with in Washington, and so this was right afterwards. So then I knew I was right. The worst situation had happened, that he had been hit. So I started chasing it, and I had done a profuse inquiry. It took me a long time. They were totally withholding the autopsy reports, which I guess I'm still the only guy that's gotten it. They're holding a little bit of it back, but the autopsy in reality shows that he had. There's no way he could have run into the tree. That's all baloney. I got the footage of the area that was taken only a couple hours after he was found, and all the rest of that. I did an extensive. I've done a DVD report, which is available at my website also on Sonny's murder. But the bottom line, without getting into all the intricacies of it, there's no question it was impossible impossible for him to go fast enough. He was 120 feet inside the tree line where he was off of the ski run. He was up actually in the woods.
What did they do? Like taser him and then drag him in and beat his brains out, or what'd they do?
You know, that part I'm not positive. It's one of two things. Either they had a deal somehow to like meet him. It's possible somebody told him they were going to give him information for his investigation, meet him secretly there, or he was hit someplace else and brought up on a ski sled and then rolled over into the snow and dragged up against the tree. But he was pistol whipped on the right side of his head, probably by a left-handed assassin.
Yeah. Well, they said on the news, Benazir Bhutto hit her head. She's on tape being machine gunned. We'll be right back.
Wow.
Right. So the first part of that video was him being upset about the Waco, Texas, and he was complaining to Janet Reno, who was, I guess, guided by Hillary Clinton to... He was pissed because, of the kids that they killed at Waco, Texas. And the fact that Janet Reno couldn't, find out what it was going to do to the kids, and he found out in just a couple of hours just by looking up some information. Because I've got an article here on the Waco, Texas thing. So the Davidian cult in Waco was dealt with by armored vehicles, remarked Gaddafi in February, defending his own crackdowns in light of the U.S. government's. April 19 marks 18 years since the end of the Waco siege and exactly 1 month since Obama began bombing Libya. So now that the federal government is again shedding blood in the name of humanitarianism, we might reflect on how it obtains legitimacy for its most brazen acts of violence. Long ago, when governments slaughtered the enemy merely for being different and thus subhuman, or for occupying desired territory, such crude rationales satisfy the state's agents and subjects. And we do that. So the modern democratic state, however, employs more sophisticated propaganda when it burns gases, shoots, and bombs people, including civilians. There is always the excuse of security. We're doing it for security, people. The security, just like terrorism. So, the targeted people, they're a threat to us somehow. So when this argument seems tenuous, it is well complemented by that most insidious of pretenses. The killing is done for the good of others. It is an act of kindness. The American empire, like the Roman and British before it, inflicts violence to civilize and rescue those in need. So along these lines, even the unparalleled mass death of World War II has been vindicated, since the most U.S. killing sprees have been directed against Hitler's ghost. Saddam Hussein and Milosevic were both compared to the Nazi rulers. So were David Koresh and Gaddafi. So killing children to stop child abuse. That's what they did basically because that's why they went in there against him, was because he was doing child abuse, but they killed children. So in the case of Koresh, leader of the Branch Davidian Church at Mount Carmel, Texas, the comparisons to Hitler were especially strained. Yet everything about this siege just outside Waco, aside from its humanitarian rationale, seems to have been forgotten. Sure, the religious group was stockpiling weapons. One of them was a legal arms dealer. But why didn't the cops just arrest Koresh while he was hanging out around town? He was an integrated member of the community. Local law enforcement befriended him. The feds were given intimate access to the Davidians' home, even enjoying a stint on their firing range with Koresh. And he welcomed them to inspect the property. The raid commenced on February 28, 1993, not out of anything approaching necessity, but because ATF wanted to look good for the cameras. Operation Showtime. And I would look that word up because I looked it up and it was pretty sick. They actually, they did back in October 18th, they did pandemic simulations. Well, they did a simulation here. They had a model of what the place was going to look like, and they did simulations how they were going to go in and do this against these people. And they called it Operation Showtime. Was the name of the long-planned attack on the Davidian home. So its main purpose to overcome the bad publicity the agency had suffered over allegations of sexual harassment racism. So let's take the heat off of us from this thing, and we'll go do this thing, except they messed it up. So the feds had constructed a model of the Davidian home, where they rehearsed a raid, whose planning began late in the George H.W. Bush administration. But the raid went horribly wrong. The Davidians fought back, apparently in self-defense. Well, duh. Which is why when the ATF ran out of bullets, the Davidians ceased fire and let the agents leave their property in peace. Well, that was nice of them. That's like it reminds me back of when my father, when I interviewed him, he was saying when he was over at war that the one time that they were going to be shot while he was driving with him and his sergeant, he goes, yeah, they pointed guns at us and they were going to shoot us. And for some reason, they just went ahead and looked at him and they sped up. And then one of his choppers came in and then killed the people that just let him go. Oh. And he's like, all I did was let these people let me live. And how did I repay him? I repaid him by having one of my choppers come in and kill them. Not that he did it, but I mean, he felt associated to it. So it just kind of reminds me of that. So soon enough, the domestic siege looked militaristic even by modern American standards. It was full-out psychological warfare. The FBI took over and cut off the Davidians' access to the press, to water, to phone calls with relatives or lawyers. They blasted recordings of loud, obnoxious music and the sounds of animals being slaughtered. Okay, I have to stop right there for just a second. For one, who is freaking recording animals being slaughtered? That's absolutely disgusting. For another, if it's a psychological warfare, that means we shouldn't be slaughtering animals, because you're doing that. That's, to me, is disgusting. I can't even begin to know what that. Ugh. I mean, we did this to them. I mean, our side did this to them, and I have to say our side because everybody who sticks up for the FBI or anything, or even doesn't not stick up for the FBI, or anytime we don't even say anything, we're allowing it to happen. So they call it a hostage situation, but people trying to leave the building were typically met with flashbang grenades thrown at them by the feds. I remember I did a report on Waco, Texas for one of my college classes. I don't remember which one it was for, but I had to get some evidence. And I remember seeing his autopsy. And he was nothing but the chest, literally no legs and no head, no arms. Just the chest, and it was burnt to a crisp. That's what his autopsy was. And it didn't really affect me back then, but now that I'm looking into the information, I'm understanding it better. Man, it would affect me a lot differently, that's for sure. So, I still can't even get that picture out of my head. So, the siege ends on April 19th, 1993, after the FBI spent hours pumping flammable and poisonous CS gas into the area where women and children had gone for safety. Then the Bureau rammed a tank and launched incendiary devices into the home. The Davidians also had Coleman lanterns in nearly every room, which could have easily fallen over in the chaos, and various combustible chemicals stored in the gymnasium.
I wondered why it caught fire.
I know, right? Although Clinton blamed the Davidians for starting the fire, the flames erupted in a manner consistent with the tank's collision into the building. There is no credible evidence that the Davidians were planning a mass suicide by fire, and all the survivors have denied that they were. As researcher Carol Moore put it, there is no doubt that Mount Carmel was systematically turned into a fire trap. The only question is, was it done through criminal negligence or with intention to commit mass murder? Some survivors convicted in the mockery of a trial have only been out of prison since 2007. Within government, however, no one even had his wrist slapped. Most Americans assume that the government was negligent at worst and that even this can be forgiven, since the FBI, with military assistance, was attempting a rescue of the innocent. You see, as we've been reminded many times, David Koresh was molesting children. First argument behind this accusation concerns Koresh's multiple young wives. Jack Harwell, the sheriff of McLennan County, explained why we should not excuse the raid on this basis. He says, to this day, we don't have a case that we can make against Vernon, Hal, David Koresh, or anyone else for child abuse, even though the news media here and other people were saying this is what happened. A man from Australia said this is what happened, but we can never get them to give us anything more than that. We just know that that's what happened. You have proof to go into court. Keep in mind, too, that most of the girls who were involved were at least 14 years old of age, and 14-year-olds are allowed to get married with parental consent. So if their parents were there and letting things happen in the way of sexual activities and what have you with their 14-year-old kids, you have common law husbands and wives. I don't say that I agree with that and that I approve of it, but at the same time, if parents are there and they're giving parental consent, we have a problem with that in making a case. So there are more serious allegations of abuse, but they are too questionable. On the first day of the 1995 congressional hearings in Waco, Democrats attempting to whitewash the Clinton administration's conduct brought out Carrie Ewell, who accused Koresh of having molested her when she was 10. No charges of this nature had been pressed against Koresh. However, during the standoff, Jewell, who was not living at Mount Carmel at the time, had appeared on the Phil Donahue show while her dad pitched their story to television networks. On the show, she said she expected to be one of Koresh's wives at age 13. In another public statement, she said that while living with the Davidians, she never expected to live past 12. So you can see, she's all over the place with her. I do want to go ahead and make sure I get on to this next video because we're not going to have probably enough time to finish completely. But this is going to be the Ruby Ridge incident. I didn't know anything about it until I looked into it, and this was happening basically right at the same time the Waco, Texas was happening. So they flubbed this one up, and they also flubbed this one up.
Well, they said that the two of those were connected. They were both Branch Davidians.
Well, I do also know that this is video is coming from the daughter who survived. So this is coming from an actual survivor of the Ruby Ridge.
Okay. You're listening to Under Lock and Key with Stephanie Kirkora. We'll be back on the other side.
Standoff between a man who is wanted by the FBI and a large number of federal agents
surrounding a cabin where a fugitive named Randy Weaver is holed up with his family.
In 1992, a bloody standoff between lawmen and an armed white separatist named Randy Weaver left his wife, 14-year-old son, and a federal agent dead.
The 11-day siege at a place called Ruby Ridge, Idaho. It happened before Waco, and for many, it's an even bigger rallying cry.
I want the truth! You've got the OK Corral. You've got certain moments in the history of American law enforcement where society says, wait a minute, we got to take a look at this in a different way. Ruby Ridge began a paradigm shift.
Inadequate performance.
Ruby Ridge shook the highest ranks of the FBI, and it remains a watchword wherever law enforcement stands off against barricaded suspects today.
This story is used as what not to do. That gives me hope. Maybe we won't make the same mistakes. Maybe we won't rush into things when it's a matter of life or death. I thought they were chasing down a moose or a bear or something. Honestly, I had no clue that there were people with guns in the woods that day.
16-year-old Sarah Weaver was in her family's remote Idaho cabin when their dog ran into the woods barking. Her father, Randy Weaver, a family friend, and her 14-year-old brother Sam followed with their rifles. The next thing she heard was an explosion of gunfire.
Everything in me wanted to run down the hill and try and, protect my brother because I knew he was down there, and I'd always been his big sister. I'd always been his protector. So there was a part of me that just wanted to take off down the driveway and make sure he was okay.
Torn, she stayed with her mother and younger sisters until the friend, Kevin Harris, returned.
He said that Sam was gone, and I think my whole world fell apart at that moment. None of us at that time were thinking that anything worse could happen.
But unbeknownst to Sarah, U.S. Marshals had been staking out her parents, who were vehemently anti-government, for months. Her father had fled charges of selling 2 illegal shotguns, and her mother had indicated they wouldn't surrender without a fight. When the dog uncovered the Marshals' location, an agent shot it, and a gunfight ensued that killed 14-year-old Sam Weaver and a deputy U.S. Marshal named William Deegan.
I can't speak for everybody on my team, but I assumed I was walking into a violent situation and there was likely to be a shootout.
Scores of federal agents quickly descended the next morning. As sharpshooters like Chris Whitcomb took position around the cabin, they were under an unusual order. If any adult male is observed with a weapon, deadly force can and should be employed.
The entire world for someone in my position at that time is this big around. You don't see the larger circumstances. You don't see the larger picture. You just see the world through a scope.
Dad was wanting to go see Sam one more time and just, I guess, do some more grieving, say goodbye, I don't know. And so I took off after him, and he made it around the shed ahead of me.
The people that I saw with assault rifles were moving from tree to building to wood pile through fog. I didn't have the shot. My finger was on the trigger. I was trying to take the shot. I didn't have it.
I just heard a giant boom. I said, Dad, what happened? And he said, I've been shot. And, at this point, my mom had stepped out of the door and she was screaming, what happened? And get in the house. And we all get piled up in front of the door, and I hear what is like a gunshot going off in my ear. And Mom just drops to my side. I knew what had happened to her immediately. I thought it was the end for all of us at that point.
Sarah's mother, Vicky, took a fatal shot to the head as she held the family's 10-month-old baby in her arms. But outside the cabin, no one was aware Vicky was dead, and agents kept trying to negotiate with her.
When they got on the bullhorn and started asking for Mom to come out and have pancakes for breakfast with her kids, and wouldn't you want to do that with your children, sort of thing. It added, it's a cliche to say it added insult to injury, but it did.
As news of the standoff spread, journalists converged on the scene.
2 people have already died. Neither side seems ready to back down.
The FBI says they will not leave until Weaver and his friend Kevin Harris, who lives with him, are in custody.
Everyone here in Naples agrees that Weaver is a white supremacist who just wants to be left alone. For police, he is a fugitive on a federal arms charge, heavily armed and dangerous.
And a small army of right-wing sympathizers also gathered on the road below the cabin to protest.
Baby killer! You're baby killer! You're a traitor! You're wasting your country!
The Weavers held out for a total of 11 days. After Vicky was shot, they believed they'd be killed if they stepped outside. The standoff ended only after Bo Greitz, a right-wing presidential candidate sympathetic to the Weavers' cause, negotiated a surrender.
Our camera caught a glimpse of the family walking into the staging area. One of the girls is wearing a red jacket at the bottom of your screen.
When I got to the meadow, it was a scene out of a movie. It was inconceivable to me to think that they would need so much and so many people and tanks and helicopters.
All this for one family.
The story was dramatized in a TV movie and folk songs, and it found a ready-made audience.
The Ruby Ridge standoff became a kind of founding myth of the radical right. It not only made the government look bad, it was bad. People, whatever views they have, whatever illegal activities they have, should not be shot down by government snipers when they are not actively threatening the life of somebody.
Later investigations revealed that law enforcement had made a series of errors. Authorities on the ground communicated poorly with agents arriving from afar, which exaggerated the threat Weaver posed, and agents on the scene failed to negotiate or set up a clear line of communication with the family until it was too late. In the end, jurors decided Randy Weaver's most serious crime was failing to appear in court. And then came accusations that the FBI had attempted to cover up its mistakes.
The FBI is feeling the heat.
During Weaver's 1993 trial, another FBI standoff ended in tragedy and accusations of misconduct. 76 members of the Branch Davidian religious sect died in a federal raid on their compound in Waco, Texas.
There are eerie parallels with Waco. In both cases, government miscalculation in the arrest of a fanatic ended in gunfire and death.
The radical right views itself as being in a battle to the death with the federal government. Ruby Ridge, for them, was the opening shot of that war.
Critics complain there was no real investigation and no real punishment after the 1992 incident. It's now clear their voices have been heard.
Amid intense federal scrutiny of the Ruby Ridge scandal, the FBI's number 2 man was demoted, 3 other agents were suspended, and 1 was sent to jail. And the Weaver family won a $3.1 million settlement from the federal government.
Law enforcement typically changes not because someone has a brilliant idea. We change because we're sued or there's public opinion that speaks against us. And we realized we had to change. We had to do this better.
Since the early 1990s, the FBI says it's overhauled how it responds to armed standoffs and trained hundreds of police departments across the country. The federal deadly force policy can't be modified on the fly, as it was at Ruby Ridge.
Basically, throw us a bone?
Yeah. You got to help me help you.
Yeah.
And agents now trained to set up better communication on the scene.
Organizationally, we've changed, right? So the negotiators are fully embedded within our tactical section.
All right, so shield, cover.
If you can slow things down and negotiate and peacefully communicate with the subjects and try to figure out what's motivating them, then you should take full advantage.
Can you hear me in the bus?
Yes, this is Katie with the FBI. I want to talk to you about how we're going to get the phone to you.
You get involved in a shootout situation in America today, it's going to be litigated for years. We look at things differently now. We look and say, time is not the issue it once was.
Take the case of John Joe Gray in East Texas. 7 years after Ruby Ridge, Gray was stopped for a traffic violation and got into a fight with a state trooper and bit him. He then retreated to his farm with his weapons and refused to come out.
John Joe Gray.
How you doing?
A 51-year-old self-proclaimed freedom fighter.
What'll happen if they try to raid this place?
You come out after us, bring extra body bags.
But local law enforcement made a unique decision. They decided not to raid his compound to bring him to court.
You look at things like Waco, you look at things like Ruby Ridge, and I'm not sure that it is worth going out there and taking that chance.
Henderson County Sheriff Ray Nutt is the fourth sheriff who's decided not to storm Gray's compound since the standoff began, and that's given this case a special status.
Often it's called the longest-running standoff in American history.
He's been under self-imposed house arrest for 14 years. The longest term in prison I could have given him was 10. I probably wouldn't have given him 10.
That doesn't satisfy Gray's former son-in-law, who watched his ex-wife take their 2 children into the compound and then disappear. Gray refused to talk on camera, but claimed he'll stay put indefinitely, living off the land and occasional help from a few supporters. If the police do come, he told us, "I ain't going down without a fight." So far, the battle has remained oddly one-sided.
This is more of, a lounge off, because everybody's just kind of chilled into what it is. This isn't going to end until John Joe Gray passes on.
It's not a perfect outcome to have somebody thumbing their nose at a lawful court order, but in the respect that nobody was killed, it's an acceptable outcome for me.
In the 2 decades since Ruby Ridge, Sarah Weaver bought a small acreage in Montana with a portion of the settlement money, distanced herself from her father's beliefs, and made peace with the past.
It's not easy being a Christian. Forgiveness is an ongoing choice and an ongoing process. I'm forgiving the people that showed up with tanks and guns and armored personnel carriers, and I'm forgiving the ones that pulled the trigger. I'm forgiving the ones that sent the orders. Forgiveness is not saying what happened is okay, because I believe if we forget those mistakes, they can be repeated.
Okay, we're back.
But not just a quick second before we go. Isn't that funny? That brings up what just happened around here. You know, with that guy who held himself up in that apartment.
Yeah.
So they really haven't learned their lesson, because I was pretty upset about that. There was no excuse for how that went down. So, yeah, they really haven't learned their lesson. But anyways, we're going to have to end it here. We're already a little bit over. And, again, hey, social distancing hopefully will be ending soon, so.
I wouldn't hold my breath.
You don't think?
If you don't social distance, you better hold your breath.
I don't know. I mean, I just don't think the bars aren't going to make it. Like, I mean, if we have to wear masks and stuff. I mean, who wants to go to a bar and watch people? You can't play pool right now. It's,
yeah. Well, it's going to be a whole new world.
Well, yeah, I think they're expecting people to snitch on each other. That's what they're trying to turn us into. Oh, and then you know that the COVID is sexually transmitted.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it's now being sexually transmitted also. Well, duh, for one. I mean, but number two, I mean, are they trying to stop the population?
Never know.
Just seems to be. But anyways, hopefully you learned about something about Sonny Bono, and I just, we should just respect the man that he was, and it's sad that he couldn't be the man that he wanted to be. I think he would have done really well.
Yeah, I think so too. You can.
Yep.
If you're just tuned in, or if you come in on the end of this, you can find us probably in about an hour or so on Spreaker.com. Look under Crooked River Media, or the Stephanie Kirkora, or you can look under Lock and Key. You'll find all of our fine podcasts there. And y'all have a good week. Go ahead and wrap it up.
Have a good night.
Under Lock and Key has been a Crooked River Media production.